Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Duncan McCollum coming to you live from KSCO Radio in Santa Cruz. And I'm very glad to be here. This station is providing a voice for the community. And today I have a subject that I have been thinking about talking about, and I'm going to today, and that's fentanyl, the street drug fentanyl, where it came from, and what to look for, and the devastating effects of it. I think probably all of us have somebody that we know or somebody very close to us that has succumbed because of the use of fentanyl. And, I'm not the exception there. A very close family member had recently passed away after many, many years struggle with this stuff. And, a lot of people don't know much about it. They don't really know the makeup, understand why it's so um, terrible and where it come from, who's using it, how to recognize it, and how it's disguised. So this is show is it's basically to help those out there who may not know a lot about fentanyl and where it comes from, and or just drug abuse in general. And maybe it will give a little bit of hope for trying to help others not end up down the same road or down this path. So I'm just going to set a timer real quick. Go. Okay. So I, I'm going to start off by just talking about drug addiction. Now, I'm the perfect example of this, and I got into drugs back in sixth or seventh grade, back in the 60s, lived up in the Berkeley Bay area, all of the hippies and Telegraph Avenue, and peer pressure and my own parts of my own life that just were caving me in basically and not letting me move forward. And being a young adolescent, basically 13, 14, 15 years old, I didn't really know. I didn't really understand what I was getting into. And my first exposure was to marijuana. And yeah, my first exposure was marijuana, and that was between summer of sixth and seventh grade. No, fifth and sixth grade, actually. My friend Robbie and I were walking by the beach, and we found a joint sitting on the ground, and neither one of us really had ever experienced it. We'd known older siblings to have played around with it, so we took that joint and smoked it. Whether we got high or not, I don't really know. And back in those days, there was not such good pot and then good pot, right? But you always heard that marijuana was a gateway drug, and or that it wasn't. I'm just going to tell you my experience because that's all I can talk about with any kind of understanding. Now, most of you know that I broke my back when I was 12. I fell out of a tree, um, crushed my back in Berkeley on the Cal campus. Basically went undiagnosed till I was 20 because, back in those days, kids were supposed to be seen and not heard. And I was, given some kind of painkiller and aspirin and these various things that didn't really do much. But my condition was poo-pooed or made unimportant. So I'd also, and the reason I'm telling you this, and you might have heard it before, but the reason I'm going into this is because I want you to understand my path. All right. So I'd already been diagnosed with dyslexia in first grade. I made a C backwards on that big crate paper with a yellow crayon, and Miss Dworkin came over and flipped out and told me. And up until that point, I was a pretty active kid, man. I was loving life. I was cruising around, catching butterflies, you know, very precocious, I was told. And I remained that, but I just had all of a sudden a failure in reading, and I was told I couldn't read and that I had these type of things, right? So this culminated. Now, I do want to bring in the fact that oftentimes there's more than one factor involved in all of this, and that in disabilities or mental disabilities and or addictions. Now, I'd already been exposed to a lot of mercury. My uncle was a dentist, And he would give us mercury in little vials to play with. And we'd go get down to the five and dime store, buy a toy for a dime, break it open, and add that mercury to our mix. And I would hold it in my hand, play with it, put it on a dime. I probably put that in my mouth. We know that mercury, it basically dissolves nerves. There's studies on it. You can look it up, the mercury effect on nerves. And this was a pretty high dose effect. Regardless, I had now been diagnosed with this thing called dyslexia, which means that they told me that where the pictures go from your eye to the back of your brain, they don't flip over at this junction called the optic chiasm right in the middle part of your brain. So the picture, instead of flipping the right way, was upside down and backwards. And that's what they say dyslexia is you see things upside down and backwards. All right, so move forward. I'm just kind of cruising along in life. In third grade, we were in reading and reading circle, reading See Spot Run. And there was a blind kid next to me named John, and he read before me in Braille, and he could read that beautifully. And it came to me, I couldn't read a sentence. Very, very embarrassing, frustrating, and caved me in. Now, I'm telling you this because of my path down the drug highway. And I think this had a huge effect on it for me. Then in fourth grade, I was 9 years old. My brother took his own life. That was pretty devastating, I must say. My mother never got over it, ended up dying of cancer. In 1973 when I was in 11th grade. And she basically allowed her grief to eat her body up. Now, along this way, all my brother had passed away, my sister moved out of the house, and all of a sudden, I was alone with two alcoholic parents that hated each other, and back pain that was keeping me from playing sports. I remember trying to do sit-ups in seventh grade PE or football team, and I couldn't do them. And the coach looked right past me like I was nothing. I didn't even know I'd broken my back at this point. So I ended up finding my group, and that group happened to be in the park. And that group in the park happened to do drugs. And the older kids had suitcases or briefcases that they'd open up, and they had every kind of drug you wanted. Now, luckily, fentanyl wasn't around then, but just about everything else from psychedelics down to marijuana to painkillers to speed, all available in seventh grade to me. And I was a little bit afraid of most of them, but I started smoking marijuana pretty regularly. In fact, I would smoke it from morning to evening. And I know a lot of people enjoy marijuana, they use it, it's relaxing to them. And, I'm not going to say that's a good or bad thing, it's an individual thing. But for me, I already couldn't read. I was already a recluse. So it basically made my symptoms worse. I didn't realize it, but I became much of a recluse. I gave up even trying to read. And I never learned to read till I was 27. And I'll go into that in a second. But as we were doing drugs in fifth or seventh, eighth grade, in eighth grade, I did mescaline for the first time. The same guy that I was smoking pot with said, "Hey, we got some mescaline. Do you want to do this?" And I was afraid of any of that stuff, but I'd already tried marijuana, and I knew that that was, after watching those shows on marijuana, I'll think of the name in a minute, but those were scarier than heck, and that never came to fruition. So I thought, yeah, let's go ahead and take mescaline. So we took some mescaline in the beginning of eighth grade, I guess, and that ended up not being so bad. It was uncomfortable, scary, and then you hit the high and then the low. And the low is when you just feel like, crap, basically. And as time went on, LSD it came into the scene. Um, Lots of things like opium, or excuse me, um, buttons, peyote buttons, marijuana. We had dexedrine for speed. Um, I was not really into the downers so much for some reason, but my point here is one thing led to another. And my day did not begin without me deciding to take some kind of drug. And of course, alcohol went along with it. So I'm leading into fentanyl. And I'm really glad it wasn't around when I was there. But I've lost somebody very dear to myself, my family, and I'm sure most people have now. There's over 100,000 deaths one year linked to fentanyl, and there's usually about 70,000, and it's pretty crazy. I'll read some more of the statistics in a couple minutes. I'm going to be referencing a book called The Truth About Fentanyl, and it's put out by drugfreeworld.org. So you can find out data on this by going to the drugfreeworld.org. And I recommend you do if you want to get some more information. This is another booklet about all of the street drugs. It's at the drugfreeworld.org. And, it helps to become familiar with it and understand, what is out there, and why people are addicted to it and what to look for. I'm just going to start by giving you some of the street names of fentanyl. And some of the names are pretty crazy. It would scare you away right away, but yet people take them. So Apache, China Girl, Chinatown, China White. Now, I thought China White was heroin back in the day, but now it's considered fentanyl. Dance Fever, Drop Dead. Why would you take a drug called Drop Dead? Fetty, Friend, Goodfellas, Great Bear, He-Man, Jackpot, King Ivory, Lethal Injection. There's another one. Okay, you want to take a lethal injection? Sure, why not? Murder 8, another one. Poison, Tango and Cash, TNT. So those are some of the street names for fentanyl. So if you hear these code languages going with your kids or people they're on a time bomb. It's a shame. You see a lot of it on social media, people bent over at the waist, just standing there in the street. So why has this happened? Why has the United States allowed this to happen? Is a question that I can't really answer, other than there's a lot of money in it and a lot of corruption. Um, what we can do with our feet on the ground is look out for our loved ones. And I'm making this show available, so maybe it might help people understand more, and maybe people that are experimenting with this stuff can find out about it. So I'm going to start giving some information about this book. So, um, what is fentanyl? And this is out of the book Fentanyl, Truth About Drugs. And you can get it online, I think, for free. Um, what is fentanyl? Fentanyl is an extremely powerful drug that has been used for decades as a painkiller because of its high potential to cause addiction. It has primarily been used to relieve severe pain, such as from advanced cancer or after serious surgery. Fentanyl is in the same class of drugs as painkillers like morphine or oxycodone and the illegal drug heroin. Those drugs, called opioids, are primarily products of the opium poppy. Some, like heroin and morphine, are direct derivatives from opium. Others, like oxycodone, are semi-synthetic, meaning created in a laboratory from a natural substance. Fentanyl is 100% created in a lab and is fully synthetic. So the significance of this, I'll read on in a minute, but there's no plant products are needed to make fentanyl, which means it can be created anywhere that lab chemicals can be ordered or obtained. This has made it easy for drug traffickers, organizations, or manufacturers to manufacture it in illicit labs for distribution on the streets. In 2013, distribution of fentanyl began skyrocketing in the United States, with resultant overdose deaths increasing from that point forward. So here's part of the thing. If it's all 100% synthetic, it doesn't even have real opioid products in it. It's all fake. That makes it 100 times or 50 times stronger than than heroin, fentanyl. And there's another one that I'll go into a minute that's 100 times stronger than opium or heroin. So this is a pretty scary thing. I mean, I think about myself and starting where I did, wanting to dull myself, dull my pain, dull my frustrations, and then having that dopamine high from the drugs made me want it more and more and more to a point where I lived for the drug. That's all I wanted to do was be high. I'd wake up in the morning in high school, smoke hash or a joint, go to school, get stoned with my friends before school, stoned on the 10 o'clock break, the 12 o'clock break, 3 o'clock after school, and then we'd figure out how to party at night. So my mind and my brain was, I was a biochemical personality. I could only function well when I had a sufficient amount of those biochemical substances in, affecting my brain. So, um, I'm lucky to be alive. If fentanyl was around, I would not be. Okay. And I barely made it out as it is. Okay. And thank God for a couple significant friends and people and family members that managed to pull me out. Now, with fentanyl, people tried. It's very difficult. It's a tough road. So the first best thing is don't ever start. The second thing is when you do, you really need a lot of help. And I've personally failed in helping somebody, and it's not a great feeling, or the people that they love too, who love them. Okay, how is fentanyl used? It's a pharmaceutical drug. As a pharmaceutical drug, fentanyl can be applied to the skin in patches, administered as a very low dose pill, or given in a lozenge called a lollipop that slowly dissolves. There are also sprays that use under the tongue or in the nose. Liquid fentanyl can be injected. Any of these forms of fentanyl can be misused. Patches can be cut up and placed under the tongue, or the content squeezed out and swallowed. Illicit forms of fentanyl are often found in fake prescription pills. Now, this is the dangerous part, any one of which can be fatal. So they take these things and they put them into pills that look like the actual pill. Powdered fentanyl can be dissolved for injection or for smoking in a glass pipe. Non-pharmaceutical fentanyl, created in a lab or in the street lab, can also be added to eye drops, nasal spray, or small squares of blotter paper that users place in the mouth. Because fentanyl can be combined with methamphetamine, speed, or cocaine, it may be snorted, smoked, or injected with users unaware that they are taking fentanyl. An increased number of illegal vapes, products, and marijuana are also being laced with fentanyl, which can be lethal. Why is fentanyl so dangerous? So, um, well, I'll go ahead. I was going to make a comment. I will in a second. Why is fentanyl so dangerous? Okay, two factors make fentanyl dangerous and deadly. One is its incredible potency. It's so potent, and it is as much as 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. As little as 2 milligrams of pure fentanyl, which are only a few grains, can be a fatal dose. The other factor is that people may not even know that they're taking fentanyl. It is often mixed with illegal drugs such as heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine. An unknowing user can unexpectedly overdose on fentanyl, and we've all known people to do that. Powdered fentanyl is often pressed into fake pills that look like real prescription drugs. In 2023, law enforcement personnel in the United States seized more than 80 million counterfeit pills containing fentanyl from the black market. 80 million. I mean, what, we're 320 million people? That's almost a quarter of the population. So this is Dr. Duncan McCollum. I'm reading out of a book called The Truth About Fentanyl. Um, it comes from organization called A Drug-Free World. You can find them at drugfreeworld.org. And if you want some help, these are the people to go to because they're going to give you the information that you need. Okay. Okay, this is Dr. Duncan McCollum, McCollum Wellness Radio. I'm talking about this because in a world that is so tumultuous right now. People are finding ways out. And if it hasn't to do with world economics or the world conditions or the income that people may be making or not making, happiness at the home or not, whatever the situation, pain in their body, they're reaching for things to knock them out of consciousness to a greater or less degree. And these things, when you get a hold of something like fentanyl, unbeknownst to you, it can kill you. And even when you know, it can kill you. And we all know that. Again, the street names, some of them Apache, China Girl, Chinatown, China White, Dance Fever, Drop Dead, Fetty, Friend, Goodfellas, Great Bear, He-Man, Jackpot, King Ivory, Lethal Injection, Murder 8, Poison, Tango, and Cash, TNT. So those are some of the words that you would hear. Now, fake pills, they can press them into pills that look just like real pills. Criminal drug networks mass produce counterfeit pills, lacing them with fentanyl and marketing them as brand name prescription drugs. Fake pills gotten from a friend or bought online or through social media may contain fentanyl and it can be deadly. So, right now there's a lot of online pharmacies that you can buy stuff from, things like any kind of painkiller. And I'll go into some of them in a minute. Well, here we go. Fake pills gotten from a friend or bought online through social media may contain fentanyl and can be deadly. These pills may look like prescription drugs such as oxycodone, oxycontin, or percotic, whatever that is, hydrocodone, Vicodin, a main painkiller for low back pain, and psychotropic medications or stimulants, Xanax and Adderall. A lot of times, Xanax or Adderall is mixed with fentanyl. In fact, that's been lethal in people that I have been associated with, unfortunately. So, here's one lady's account. I went down to her room and opened her door, and I found her. She was standing upright, but she was bent over with her head down, arms on the couch. She had passed away in that position from this terrible drug. How does fentanyl affect the body and how does it kill people? A person who overdoses on fentanyl becomes groggy and sleepy and may quickly lose consciousness. The drug affects the part of the brain that controls breathing. So, if the person's breathing will slow down and become difficult, they may begin to snore, or make gurgling sounds. And I've experienced this until they stop breathing altogether. And anybody that knows anybody along this line, you should have those EpiPens. And I'm not sure exactly where to get them. You can probably ask your medical doctor, or I was going to say get them online, but there you go. But I've seen this save lives. Okay. So if you know anybody who is suspected of this, you should have some, probably anyway. Fentanyl can also freeze the muscles of the chest, which will stop somebody from breathing. I remember doing large amounts of cocaine, it would make my chest freeze. I could imagine if it was mixed with fentanyl, how that would affect it. The physical response can happen immediately after adjusting the drug. So it doesn't give you any warning. And once that lethal dose is it's very difficult to come back. You need to have the right stuff. Usually 911 needs to be there immediately. And this is, again, Dr. Duncan McCollum. I'm talking about a subject nobody wants to hear about, nobody wants to recognize as being there, but I'm just taking it on myself to spend a show talking about this because I think it's important. If you know anybody who you want to get this to, it will be on my YouTube channel. Dr. Duncan McCollum on YouTube, I think is what it is. And you can copy the link and send it to people you know. And maybe it will be helpful. If we help one person, it's worth me talking about this on the show. Okay. Symptoms of fentanyl overdose. Okay. Since even small doses of fentanyl can be fatal, recognizing the signs of an overdose can save lives. Here are some of the symptoms of fentanyl-related overdose: deep sedation, slow, shallow breaths, respiratory arrest, blue nails and lips, gasping, gurgling, and snoring. You recognize that one. Unresponsive or unconsciousness, cold and clammy skin, some of the symptoms. Short-term effects of fentanyl. Now, this is obviously the people taking this are never, it's just like a car accident. You drive by a car accident, you kind of look, slow down, you never expect it to be you. And I think that that's probably, we have this type of mentality on lots of things in life. But short-term effects of fentanyl, the danger for a person who consumes fentanyl, either intentionally or unintentionally, is that they can too easily suffer a fatal overdose even after a single dose. Okay, so it can be death, sedation, confusion, poor physical coordination, drowsiness, nausea, vomiting, tiny pupils, constipation, headaches, respiratory depression. Okay, and then it talks about a father here who talked about his son passing away, and I won't read the details of it. Um, Long-term effects of fentanyl. Most obvious short-term effects of fentanyl is addiction. Because a drug is so powerful, addiction can occur quickly. This is one of the reasons some drug dealers add fentanyl to methamphetamine or cocaine to get their customers hooked on their drug fast. So it's all synthetic. It's 100 times stronger or 50 times stronger than heroin, 100 times stronger than methadone, one of those. And it's so addicting because our body has no back off to it. When you have maybe man or unman-made drugs, natural substances, it's a little easier, but these things are so strong and they're designed to get into the receptors of our brain and get that serotonin dopamine response so high that it's just they can't stop. I think we've all in school when we were young watched the rat that was addicted to sugar and he had to step across an electric field to eat the sugar. And, he wouldn't care about getting shocked to eat the sugar. And he would do that till, he couldn't move anymore. And that's the same effect that fentanyl has. That dopamine high is so high. All drugs do, and alcohol and other things on the internet that you shouldn't be watching. And the internet in general is addicting, right? Um, so some, dealers often mix fentanyl with other drugs in small quantities needed to get them people higher. So they make their substance higher. Adding fentanyl makes other drugs more powerful and cheaper, but also more deadly. All right, so addiction, permanent damage to the respiratory system, mental fog, damage to the liver or kidneys, depression, anxiety, and mood swings, suppressed immune system, and death. Those are, again, some of the long-term effects of fentanyl. You're playing Russian roulette with some kind of revolver there's many chambers, but one of them has a bullet. And unfortunately, it's getting off this stuff is I haven't had to do it myself, but it's really tough and you need professional help. So a short history of fentanyl, just so you kind of understand it. Fentanyl was developed as a medical drug in 1959 and approved for medical use in 1968. It was first used in hospitals as an injection for severe pain or anesthetic formulas for surgery. Because of fentanyl's addictive potential, it is primarily prescribed for severe pain and end-of-life care, such as with terminal cancer patients. Now, my own personal experience is I had my appendix rupture in 2021. Felt like I got shot with a double-barreled shotgun. It just exploded. And I had to have surgery and they had to knock me out. And they wanted to use fentanyl, and I asked them to use something else. So they did, the anesthesiologist. They use this to offer it to women. My daughter just reminded me when she was delivering my grandson, they'd wanted to give her a shot of fentanyl and she refused it. Fentanyl can cross the placental barrier, and all of a sudden you got a kid that's addicted to it. I have several cousins whose mother was addicted to crack back it's like 20, 25 years ago. She had four kids that were all crack babies. Luckily, they're all doing well, but they've got their struggles because of that. Now, just imagine a fentanyl baby. you're already addicted to that, it's pretty rough. And they're out there all the time, you know. Who's letting this come in? There's a lot happening right now to make sure it's not coming into the country, working with different the heads of different governments, like, back overseas, to get them to stop making the components of fentanyl, because they'll send over the components to a lab somewhere in a country outside of the United States or even in the United States. And then they'll make these pills and try to move them in. And they're killing people. That's not even a fun high anymore. Not that, I mean, back in the day, I thought it was fun, but I know that it was depressant. Anything is a stimulant to begin with. You take too much of it, it's a depressant. Then if you take too much again, it will kill you. So, yeah, I don't think there is a recreational fentanyl use. It's all or none. And all means, certain um, Russian roulette bullet is going to get you eventually. In the 1990s, fentanyl patch was approved, and in 1998, fentanyl began being distributed in lozenge form. Following those releases, minor quantities of these forms were diverted from medical facilities and illegally sold on the streets. This is the 1990s, okay? Resulting in a small number of overdose and deaths each year. Overdose. In 2006, a dramatic increase in fentanyl-related overdose deaths began to record in the United States. They were traced to an illicit lab in Toluca, Mexico. When this lab was closed down, the number of deaths dropped back to normal lower levels. There shouldn't be any level. In 2013, deaths started increasing again, and labs in Asia manufactured fentanyl in large quantities. Establishing drug trafficking organizations began importing fentanyl from these labs, often adding adding it to heroin, methamphetamine, and cocaine, and counterfeit prescription drugs. So now we've got an industry that is taking this stuff in 2013, producing it in another country, adding it to heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, and making counterfeit pills, selling them on the open market as a painkiller, Oxycontin, um, Vioxx, all these various things. If trafficking patterns expanded, overdose deaths steadily increase. The Center for Disease Control in the United States and Prevention established yearly fentanyl deaths at more than 70,000 over 1 year. It is estimated that 84% of opioid deaths involves a drug from fentanyl, from the fentanyl family. 84% of deaths from opioids have fentanyl as its level. Now, there's even a stronger drug than fentanyl. There are doses of drugs related to fentanyl, some of them even stronger. For example, carfentanil, 100 times more powerful than fentanyl, and is used to treat elephants. Holy moly. Okay. However, dealers have added it to drugs injected for people, causing thousands of deaths. So they're adding this 100 times now. Okay, so this is Duncan McCollum, Dr. McCollum, McCollum Wellness Radio. I'm taking a step aside from my normal shows to kind of have public service announcement about fentanyl, how you can recognize it, getting you a little bit familiar of what it is, what it does. So hopefully you can help somebody you know or love, right? Or stay away from it yourself. So fentanyl deaths, a catastrophic epidemic. The impact of fentanyl has been the most tragic in the United States, where in 1 year, 2 out of every 3 drug overdose deaths were caused out of fentanyl. In 1 year, 2 out of every 3 drug overdose was caused by fentanyl. In April 21, a total number of overdose deaths over a 12-month period reached over 100,000 people for the first time, with fentanyl as the main cause. So I know that our government is working to get this stuff out of our country, and it's a battle that is going to be fought for a long time. But if we can reduce it to some degree, then we might be able to save somebody you know or love. But it's not going to go away easily, and there's a lot of resistance, a lot of money involved in this. And you'd be surprised the pockets it's lining. I don't know, but just put that into your imagination. Okay, so here's some of the people you may know that died from fentanyl. Prince, the music icon, died from an accidental overdose of self-administered fentanyl, so they say. Mac Miller, at the age of 26, the rapper and producer, died from a combination of cocaine, alcohol, and fentanyl. Tom Petty, who doesn't love Tom Petty, singer songwriter, overdosed on a fatal mix of fentanyl, oxycodone, Xanax, and other substances. That's a pretty common mix of Xanax and fentanyl. Lexi Alajai, I'm probably saying that wrong, 21-year-old rapper, singer, songwriter, died from a fentanyl and alcohol overdose. Tyler Sanders, the young actor who had a history of illicit drug use before he overdosed on fentanyl at 18 years old. Just think, we're stealing these lives. You know, I got to tell you, I'm 70 years old and I quit drugs when I was 27. Thank God. It almost killed me. I OD'd and barely made it, but people cared about me. And now I've been clean since I was 27. I'm 70, that's a long time. But it took me a long time to really recover. I couldn't even read a book till I was 28 because of all of the previous things I talked about with the dyslexia, with the breaking my back, with the family tragedies, and then just getting addicted to these drugs. So there was no ability for me to analyze words because I was just so mixed up in my head. Angus Cloud, famous as Fez on Euphoria, the actor died at 25 from a cocktail of illicit drugs, including fentanyl. Jordan Kashmir, the reality TV personality, was 26 when she died of an overdose of fentanyl and cocaine. Jimmy Hayes, 31-year-old National Hockey League star, death was caused by fentanyl and cocaine toxicity. Excuse me. Jalen Ferguson, his NFL career was cut short at 26 when he overdosed on fentanyl and cocaine. Tyler Saggs, baseball player. Coolio, hip hop legend. Shock G, U.S. rapper. Luke Bell, country music singer. Logan Williams, actor. Daniel Mickelson, actor. Michael Williams, actor. Frank Valangora, actor. So, you know, these are just some of the famous people, but people are dying all the time. And, you know, I just want to say that in my when I finally got off of drugs and it nearly killed me. And I've told my story many times, but a brief version, I was sitting in my music room, had all these instruments in there, doing all the cocaine I wanted with speed mixed into it, a big glass of scotch there, you know, and the best pot available at the time. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. Well, I almost did. I don't know if it would have been heaven though. My heart almost, I felt like it stopped and I was frozen and it scared me. And I decided I wanted to live. And I just quit. I don't know. If it was fentanyl, I wouldn't have been able to quit. And I'd never done heroin, thank God. But I did enough of the bad stuff that it would have killed me. But one thing I that helped me at that time is I had my grandfather's globe. You know, it's a 1949 globe, and I was looking at it a little while later. Don't remember the exact time, and I thought, "Where's Aptos?" That's where I was living at the time, and I kind of spotted it there, and I went, "Okay, there. Where's my house?" And then I imagined me being in my house, and then I imagined me being in my head because I didn't live outside of my head. Everything had to be inside my body. The world was inside my body. Anything that existed was a chemical reaction inside my body. I was blind to the world. And you know, I at one point thought, why read a book when, you know, you can go outside and do stuff? I didn't even want to go outside. But I started to realize, well, looking at that globe, where's my house? And I got out of my head into my house, my viewpoint. So I was so focused on in, how do I create something in me to satiate my fears, my pains, my desires, my failures, my loss in love and family and all that. I was trying to dampen it with these drugs. And also just the addiction and the dopamine high on top of that made it so confusing. I didn't know which way was out. So, but I did get out of my head into my house, and my mom had left the house to my sister and I. And I started looking around at all her art. She was an amazing artist. And I started to kind of get the idea. I'd seen her paint a lot of these pictures growing up. And I started to remember where she would take us to paint these pictures out in the middle of, a field somewhere or on the ocean, or she had a studio below in one of her houses, and she'd have a bunch of artists there, and they'd have nudes that they painted, which of course interested me. But I started to come out of my head for a minute, partly because I was scared to death and I was going to die. Then I went, okay, well, what's outside my house? And I had daisies growing out there, a big tree. It was a black acacia tree and big rope that I could climb. Then I started looking at the ocean, and then I backed out and I started to see Central Coast, then California, then the ocean to Hawaii and California. Then I started to visualize the United States and then visualize the whole world as though I was outside looking at that world. It was a pretty weird phenomenon. And, maybe induced by drugs or maybe just me as a spiritual being deciding I had to get out of my head. And I did get out of my head. And I started becoming interested in things that I wanted to do in my life again. I hadn't really been interested since sixth grade. All I was trying to do was check out. Too many deaths in my family, too much pain in my body, um, no ability to do activities outside because of my back pain. I could run around and play a bit, but could never sustain um, organized sports. My back hurt too much afterwards. And, anyway, at 20 years old, I hurt my back so bad that I was carried into a doctor's chiropractic office against my will. So it's been 8 years now. This guy, Dr. York, talked to me, said he wanted an x-ray. Two friends had to hold me up because I couldn't walk or stand. And he took my x-ray. And then after 20 minutes of hearing them bang around and what they had the dark room sign over it, he came out and put an x-ray on the wall on the white light, and he said, pointed to something, goes, when did you break your back? I could clearly see a crushed vertebra. I was 20 and I'd crushed it when I was 12. I never told him about that because I just said I lifted a piano and hurt my back last week or 3, 4 weeks ago. So finally I had an answer that explained why I was in so much pain. And it took me still another 7 years to get off of the drugs. And I still couldn't read um, because I was so messed up from these drugs. I still did pot every day, unless it wasn't available, and that was rare. Sometimes you could only get pot with paraquat on it, or so they say, because they were trying to stop it. But, I still did other drugs like LSD, and then I got involved with cocaine and speed, crystal meth. I'd smoke it, I'd put it in my joints, I'd mix it and found some opium poppies around. And so I was pretty much a biochemical personality up until that time. I almost OD'd, like I told you. So the reason I'm talking about this in myself is we have this idea that it won't happen to us, just like the car accident. And we don't think a little drugs are going to hurt us. And maybe they haven't hurt you yet, and maybe they never will, but they're going to hurt somebody and they're going to hurt them bad. Um, so I know that marijuana has been legalized, and a lot of people use it for medicinal purposes. You can find it on street corners everywhere legally now. I'm not going to necessarily say good or bad about it to those people. Only for myself, it was a gateway drug for me. And that's my own personal experience. And it made me dumb. It made me, I didn't even know that it kept me from being able to read. I already couldn't read. And then the trying to focus with that stuff kept me internalized into my head. And once I realized that, I didn't like it. I didn't like having this rose colored glasses on that I was looking out of. And today is the same thing. I'm 70 years old. I've only got a few more, maybe 2 decades, 3 decades on the planet, maybe, but they're not going to be in my youth. So I really cherish every day. I don't want to have alcohol. I don't want to have these different types of things that are going to deaden my understanding and my awareness of what I could do in my life. Because, today is a new day and I can do whatever I want. I can achieve whatever I want as long as I can stay focused and, find the right tools, then you can do something about it. So, um, I'm been reading about this terrible drug called fentanyl, and this is a booklet that I found. It's called drugfreeworld.org. And not only do they talk about fentanyl, they talk about all of the street drugs. They talk about, let me see what other ones they have here. Um, go to the glossary: marijuana, alcohol, fentanyl, synthetic drugs, ecstasy. Thank God I never did that. That was coming out right in about the time I was quitting. Cocaine, crack cocaine, crystal meth, methamphetamine, inhalants, heroin, LSD, and then the abuse of prescription drugs. So, um, I would just say, look, you've got one life right now that you're living. We don't know where we're going to go after this. My experience is that I'm not my body, but I was using my body to get sensations to make me high or check out or dumb or numb. So my body's chemical reactions would have effect on me as a spiritual being. And I got addicted to that and it almost killed me. But I really recommend that, live for today and create your tomorrows and don't regret yesterday. That's something said by a guy named L. Ron Hubbard that I read about. Pretty cool. Um, I'm going to give the phone number here, Drug Free World, 888-668-6378, 888-668-6378. Now, you can call them if you know somebody that's in trouble. Um, there's a barcode that you could probably click on this YouTube thing if you want. You can get some help. They can direct you to different areas that these people might get help if they're willing. You have to be willing, and that's the hardest thing is getting somebody to decide they want to change. And when I decided that I wanted to change, um, thank God it wasn't too late. And I had somebody, my older sister, cared about me. She'd actually moved from the Bay Area to Santa Cruz because she knew I was not doing well. Put her business there, just kind of kept checking on me, connecting with me. And one day she knew it was time. And she goes, "Okay, you need help." And I go, "You're right, I do." And it was right after that OD thing. And thank God for her helping me. And she had tried to help me for many years. So don't give up with one effort. And I feel that perhaps any of us wish that we had more tools at hand and made more effort. But all we can do is move forward today and love the people that may not be with us and were the effect of this terrible phenomenon that our government basically has allowed to go on. Somebody's not stopped it for decades since 1990 something when it started. 93, I think they started to notice it. And it's a criminal cartel organizations. And we are as individuals, we don't have a lot of clout. As a group, we have a lot more. But if you have somebody that's suffering from any kind of drug abuse, reach out to a drug-free world. Maybe they can guide you. Or, I'm in Santa Cruz. You can reach out to my um, office 831-459-9990, or info at McCollumFamilyChiropractic.com. I'm not in the business of helping people get off of these things, but I have an ear that I can try to give you guidance to what I would do if it were me or my family or somebody I know. Not, there's no perfect way to get this handled, but all you can do is do your best and love people. They're going to make their choices no matter what we want them to do. So, um, I'm probably stepped on some toes about marijuana, but that's your experience. My experience is that that did allow me to do more things down the line. My choices, okay, but I was a young kid, pretty stupid when it came to even understanding why I was in pain. Everybody I looked to, all of the authorities that I looked to, didn't have an answer for me, and they gave me pills that didn't work. And I grew up in the 70s and 60s then, and Jefferson Airplane lived right across the bay, and they played that song White Rabbit, right? Where, one pill makes you taller, the other makes you small, and the pill that mother gives you doesn't do anything at all. Go ask Alice when you're 10 feet tall. And I fell into that. I loved the song. I still like the song, but it gave me answers that were different than the ones that I was getting. And the path I went down was not, it is what it is. I don't regret anything at this point, but because I'm living for today. I feel like I have a really successful business, chiropractic office. I've helped lots of people. We definitely don't help everybody because some people are not made for what we do, but we're always there for people. And we have a lot of specials. So I'm just going to put a little commercial out there today that, if you are in pain and low back pain, sciatica, shoulder pain, neck pain, knee pain, anything like that, then there are solutions that can help. The soft wave therapy treatments that we do with the laser, you have a $49 special to come in and try it. I'll take an x-ray of the area complaint. If it's appropriate, we will do the treatment. We just got to make sure it's the right thing to do. And sometimes people have other things going on that we can't do it, but it is a stem cell producing machine. It is a sound machine. It's pure sound, 3,358 miles an hour. It goes like a thunderbolt or something breaking the sound barrier, and it comes out and goes through the healthy tissue, but it interrupts unhealthy tissue and tells the brain to go fix it. So it's pretty cool. Then the lasers work on something called the mitochondria, the energy cell in your body, or in the carburetor of the cell, or the fuel injection center system now, because nobody knows about carburetors anymore. But when we hit the skin or the area with three different color lasers, violet, red, and green, it just like a sun, when you go out and get sun, it turns into vitamin D, synthesizes vitamin D, or in a plant, chlorophyll. It's a leaves and creates chlorophyll, which is like blood, except for one molecule. We have iron and they have some other. But if you took that one out and put heme in it, or lead or iron, you got blood. But anyway, life is there to live. Uh, you have the opportunity to do whatever you want, whenever you want. You can change your mind at any time. What you think about, you talk about. What you talk about, you bring about. And sometimes you need help, education, tools, support. And there's a lot of that out there. And you just need to know where to go for that. So I hope this has been helpful for you. The show's been pretty much about fentanyl. And I found this booklet, and it's called Fentanyl, The Truth About Fentanyl. And you can get these for yourself at the drugfreeworld.org. They also have booklets on every one of these drugs, but this one's just about drugs in general. Drugfreeworld.com, Truth About Drugs. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. This is Dr. Duncan McCollum. You can come to my office so we can see if we can help you physically. 831-459-9990, or info at McCollum Family info at McCollumFamilyChiropractic.com, 831-459-9990. Thank you very much and have an amazing rest of the day.